Perhaps I'm becoming something of a crotchety old man, but is it just me, or do a lot of AAA games just don't have that magic anymore? That sense of wonder, that excitement, that urge to go out at midnight to the latest new release to pick up the game you and everyone else has been waiting for. Seems like it's just hard to find, a video game that has that feel to it when you were younger, going to GameStop or wherever and buying a new game, rushing home to open the plastic and having pride in owning the game, beating it and adding it to your collection. I'd chalk it up to the curse of wisdom and experience. We're no longer wowed by certain things that we've seen or experienced because we've seen them and experienced them 1,000 times over by now. A few exceptions do slip through the cracks every now and then and make me realize all over again why this is my favorite medium to pass my free time with. Expedition 33 is the most recent, I'm sure, a game that despite its very small development team managed to create one of the best gaming experiences, gameplay-wise and story-wise, I have had the pleasure of playing. That feeling of not wanting to put the controller down even for a moment when you do, and when you do, all you think about is when you can get right back to it. Baldur's Gate 3 is another such example in recent years, and it makes me think that many games today are just coming from the higher-ups of studios to churn out the next big thing just to increase their sales forecasts for their quota, trying to raise it every single year. The passion for game development is being snuffed out by greed at the top of a lot of these companies, and it's slowly choking the life out of this industry. We've also hit a point in games where graphically they can't really go any further. They've been pushed to their limits in terms of fidelity, and now what people care about is to have that same fidelity with at least a bare minimum of 60 frames per second. Gone are the days of going from one console generation to the next and being in absolute awe of the graphical enhancements from hardware to hardware. Going from the NES to the Super Nintendo was modest but still a pretty big change. And then came the PS1 and the N64 era, and things started going from 2D to 3D right before our eyes. Voice acting and amazing stories could be told in games like Metal Gear Solid, and we couldn't possibly think it could get any better. And then the PS2 Xbox generation comes around. Seeing the difference between, say, Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear Solid 2 in only a 3-year difference. Yes, those two games were only about 3 years apart, and then the jump in technology was insane. Hell, even the jump from the PS2 to the PS3 era, where everything was now full HD with higher quality assets and textures and lighting and everything else under the sun. I'd say it wasn't until we hit the PS4 and Xbox One generation that games really have started to all blur together in terms of visual quality. Hell, even 13 years later, and some games from 2013 still look better than some AAA games we get today. And what's sadder is the cost of development for today's games are through the roof. So if a game only does moderately well, and it's something you actually truly enjoy, you may never see a sequel or follow-up as the cost for making these games is higher than anything in the industry. Remember when I talked about the quality from fidelity from console to console to console and how the excitement is gone? How excited were people when they saw the Switch to the Switch 2? I mean, I know a lot of people went out and got it just because, you want to have the newest system, but it just feels like we went from before, the 360 to the Xbox One. That was good, but going from the Xbox One to the Series X, it just wasn't that big of a jump. Everything just feels like it's stagnant. We're stuck in a rut now. So, and remember how I mentioned how amazing Expedition 33 was, and how it was made by only a team of, I kid you not, 33 people? Well, most game companies today are way too bloated with too much damn staff to count. I'm talking the big boy AAA studios, the ones with 900 to thousands, yes, plural, thousands of employees working on a single game at a time. This is unsustainable, and us gamers are paying the price for it, figuratively and literally. And these games, the development time for them are taking longer and longer and longer. Most games used to take 2.5, 3 years to make. Now you're lucky if you get a game in 5 or 6 years. In the PS3 generation alone, we had, from say Naughty Dog, we had 3 Uncharted games and The Last of Us. You know what we've had from them for the PS5 generation? Nothing. And it's been about 5 years. So that just goes to show you, what's happening. And games keep going up in price. Now from 70 to 80, as companies are testing the waters of what is commercially acceptable and what fans are willing to put up with from game to game. Gaming is no longer an industry that inspired like young fans to take up game development, to live out their dreams of creating fun, creative, innovative games for all to play. It's been snuffed out by greedy corporations and CEOs and higher-ups just wanting the next big bonus to fill their pockets. There has been some pushback to this from some companies, and there's even some employees who quit and form their own studios hoping to capture that creative magic again. Like how Expedition 33's core group of starting members are former, Ubisoft employees that knew the game they wanted to make could never be made in that kind of environment. This is a hobby we all love, and we want to see it thrive, but not at the cost of what makes it so much fun to begin with. Maybe AAA games are losing their magic, but it doesn't mean they're lost forever. And hopefully someday soon these companies can go back to what's important and focus on what matters instead of trying to shove politics in every chance they get or try to nickel and dime us at every opportunity because they mismanage the budget, on their game. This is just one of those things where the magic is gone, or it's slowly being snuffed out, at least in the big studios and all these big companies. A lot of indies are still holding the torch, and they're coming out with a lot of great games every year. It's just a lot of eyes aren't on them, sadly, because most of the time we're just worried about the next big thing, the next big thing, the next big thing. It's hard to see a lot of games and studios that you used to love and grew up with just the way they are now. Like with Bungie, like their fall off. Like Halo, the studio, like what they're doing, what 343 became, and other Halo studios, of what that game eventually, that series became after it switched to a different, team. But on that note, thank you all so much for watching, liking, subscribing, commenting, all that good stuff. It means the world to me. Talk to you next time.